And recording, so we're good. Okay.
Hi guys, we're just going to give it a second while we let everyone join.
Couple more, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're all good to go.
Sounds good. So we're just going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So my name is Sydney Jensen Schaffner. I am an engagement intern at the Study Abroad office. I am a junior on campus and I am majoring in political science, history, and education studies.
And I'm Kira Emanuelides. I'm a CALS study abroad marketing intern, so still work for study abroad, but over in the CALS office. I'm a senior and I study genetics and genomics. I forgot to put on there, I also have a criminal justice certificate.
Okay, so I'm going to start us off. So last spring, I studied abroad in the UW in Florence program. So this program, the advising office, is in the IAP office. Our program structure is a UW signature, which is partnered with CET. So how that function is you take one class with a professor abroad, and then you take the rest of your classes through the provider CET. So you have Italian professors, but through the CET provider program. So you're not with other Italian students, but rather you're with other American students from other American universities across the United States. The primary subjects you'll be studying are arts, business, humanities, social sciences, and Italian language. While I was abroad, I was really able to focus on my history major. The duration is during the spring. It's from about mid-January to early May. Very similar to the UW schedule. Anyone from a freshman to a senior is able to study abroad. Is either in apartments or with a local host family. The primary language in the classroom is English, excluding the one Italian class you are expected to take. That is English and Italian, of course. And then applications for this specific program open this May on May 1st and they close in August. And this is a competitive program, so I would encourage you, if you're in between programs, to apply to this one first and then see your results and go from there. So, why UW in Florence? I chose to study abroad in Florence due to its role as the epicenter of the Renaissance. There is so much history to explore, and it was really an amazing opportunity for me to really dive into my history degree. There's also simply courses in a variety of subjects. So I also took like a food and culture class where I got to learn a lot about Italian culture and that food, how it's made, how meals are, it's just that kind of stuff. Um, Classes, I took Italian level 2. I took a Medici history course, a food and culture course, as well as a Secrets and Legends of Florence course. The Secrets and Legends of Florence course was taught by a UW professor. Some of the other schools on the program were Cornell, Vanderbilt, and George Washington. So there's also a great deal of on-site support in the UW in Florence program with CET. So for example, just something that I recall is that I remember when Dune 2 came out and I really wanted to see it. So I went to my like advisors there and I'm like, is there a way to watch a movie in English? And we figured out a way to do so in the movie theater. And there's also simply just so much to see in Florence from museums, landmarks, and restaurants. So just like a few places are Pizzi Palace, which is one of my favorite places, the gorgeous palace that's been transformed to a museum. And that's with Boboli Gardens. There's just like miles of gorgeous garden. There's also the Galleria dell'Accademia, which has the David. It's a little bit smaller museum, but it's just as beautiful. There's also the degli Uffizi, which has the Birth of Venus and the Medusa. There's also the Basilica di San Lorenzo, um, San Santa Maria Novella, Basilica di Santa Croce, which is one of my favorites, as well as the Medici Chapel. There was just so much to see. So yeah, I just have some photos from a few different places. Starting in the left corner, you can see Pizzi Palace, and below that is San Lorenzo. Then you can see a beautiful sculpture of the David. And then I have a picture from the Pinocchio Museum because the creator of Pinocchio was actually from Florence, so they have a little Pinocchio Museum, which is super cool. And then I just have a few more pictures from inside various basilicas and museums. Okay, so the academics. So first, I'm just going to give you a broad overview of study abroad academics and then more program specific. So through study abroad, you will earn in-residence credit for UW-Madison for all of the courses you take. So you can keep working towards your degree and stay on your academic track. All grades are recorded on your transcript, and they all become part of your UW-Madison GPA. It's important to note that participants of programs offered in partnership with the College of Engineering are granted pass-fail. You will stay continuously enrolled in UW-Madison while you study abroad, which means you'll maintain your student status and everything like that. The majority of programs are taught in English, but we also do have some language immersion programs. I believe we have about 40. And then we have an online filter where you can kind of go through and like look at different academic programs within classes. So now UW Florence specific. So through UW in Florence, you will enroll in approximately 13 to 16 credits. So of these credits, one will be a professor-led course. The professor that goes abroad with students changes per semester. I had Stefana Buccini, and we did a literature class, The Secrets and Legends of Florence, which was super interesting. And I know this spring that we have a different professor and a different course being taught. You'll take one Italian language course according to whichever level you're at. So if you're just taking your first level, you'll start at beginner, or if you take Italian before you leave, you'll take Italian 2 abroad, like I did. And then you can also enroll in approximately 2 to 3 CT electives. So I chose to enroll in 2, the Medici history course as well as the food and culture course. Um, your courses will be in one of 2 learning centers. They are about 10, 15 minutes from each other, not super far, just across the river. Lectures is very similar to UW-Madison style. There's in-person lectures, discussions, and then a little different. There's a lot of also field trips in this program where like we go and we try different foods, or we go and we go to different churches and basilicas and piazzas and so on. And then usually classes meet twice a week. And it's also important to note that the school week in Italy is Monday through Thursday. So on the right, I just have a few different photos. I have a photo from my Italian food and culture course. There was a cat that just kind of roamed around who would come into our class every once in a while. For this class, we also went on a pasta making field trip, and you can see a man showing us how they make pasta. And we also sampled a lot of authentic Florentine food, as you can see on the bottom. Accommodation. So for UW in Florence, you have the option to stay on an apartment or homestay. It's all off-campus housing. It's just kind of going to be in the city. So if you're staying in an apartment, it'll be 2 to 9 students per apartment and 2 students per bedroom. And because it is a UW in Florence program, you'll be primarily staying with UW students, which is kind of nice. A little sense of community can be gained there. And if you do the homestay option, it'll be 1 to 3 students per homestay and then 1 to 2 students per bedroom. And then in the apartments, there's a shared bathroom, an in-unit washer, there's a common room and a kitchen. They also supply Wi-Fi, basic furnishing, and kitchenware. Something to know is that they do not have dryers, so you have to air dry your clothes unless you choose to take your clothes to a laundromat. And yeah, there was also someone who came once every 2 weeks to do some cleaning in the common areas, which was super nice, and the Wi-Fi was really sufficient. Okay, so a typical day in Florence for me, like with classes. I would wake up in the morning and then get ready for class. I would stop at a cafe for breakfast before class. My typical order was un cornetto con crema y un espresso. So that's a cornet with cream in it and then a small coffee. After that, I would eat that at the cafe and then I would walk to my classes and I would study either at the Learning Center or at various cafes in between my classes. There's so many cafes everywhere to go to. After my classes, I'd usually stop at a panini shop for lunch, or I would just go eat lunch at home. And then usually after classes, I would stop by a market to get some fresh fruits and vegetables for dinner that night. Um, then common times, I would go home, put everything away, and then I would meet a friend at Gianti Odon, which is a cinema bookstore where I would do a lot of my studying after classes. After that, I would go home and make myself a little dinner. And then followed by that, I almost always would go on a short walk in the evening. It's just such a beautiful city and an amazing opportunity to just kind of walk around, explore the city. And I'd oftentimes get a gelato because you kind of have to. So I just kind of have some photos of like an average day for myself. So starting in the top left corner, we have the Arno River. I walked alongside the river every day for my classes. It's beautiful views. And sometimes I would even take my food out to like the river wall and eat over there with my breakfast. The next photo is Mercato Centrale. There's a few of them throughout Italy, with one being in Florence. The first floor consists of food vendors, so we have veggies, meats, seafoods, baked goods, all of that, bakeries and such on the first floor. The second floor is more like a food court with a ton of international food. So there was American food up there and just a ton of different cuisines up there. And I'd oftentimes stop here to get some fresh foods for dinner or the weekend. The next photo is Quincy-Odan, the cinema bookstore. It's really, really pretty. So as you can see, there's a bookstore in the bottom, and then as you go up, there's a movie theater seating, as well as you can't see it super well in the photo, but there's desks along the sides on the second and third floors for students to go and do homework, which was one of my places to do homework. They'd actually usually played various Disney movies in the background, sometimes in English, sometimes in Spanish, but was all, oh, not Spanish, excuse me, Italian. But super cool, just a really relaxing way to study. And then this is a photo of a small flea market outside of my apartment in Santo Spirito. They usually had a few vendors every morning, usually selling some type of clothing garment. And then every Sunday they had a large one where a ton of vendors from throughout Florence and the greater area come in and sell products. So there you could get clothes, handmade products, just honestly so many things, fruits, vegetables, jewelry, so much jewelry, so many things. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, I have a photo of a breakfast. This was actually my first breakfast in Florence, and it's fairly representative of most of my breakfasts. I did have a cappuccino instead of espresso, but very delicious. A little fun fact about Italy is that you're not supposed to order a cappuccino past 11 a.m. because it is considered a breakfast drink. Next, I have pizza. Um, Italian pizza, of course, has a special place in my heart. As you can see, these are two of my go-to pizzas, the quattro formaggi for cheese, as well as the margherita. Um, and then next we have an appetizer here. Is a traditional appetizer. And then we have a traditional dish, gnocchi with tomato sauce, a wonderful dinner. Some gelato on the river from one of my favorite gelato places. Um, it's just really, really authentic. I loved it. And this is one of my favorite dishes I had while in Florence. This is truffle gnocchi. It's actually from a restaurant that was right below my apartment, and they only were open in the evenings, and it's just amazing food, and everything was very affordable food-wise if you went to the right places. Okay, so transportation. So getting around Florence, you're honestly probably going to walk everywhere. I walked everywhere in Florence. I lived approximately 20 minutes from both learning centers, and I walked both. Both were very manageable walks. Everybody walks in Florence. They do have taxis for when you do need them. They also do have a bus for public transport, but most people in my program I know primarily walked and occasionally took taxis when needed. And then to get around Italy as a whole, we primarily take the train. Italy has a really amazing train system. And then on the right-hand side, I just have some apps that I use while abroad. I have two apps for the train system and then one that was popular for taxis. Okay, so program costs. Starting under the IP program fee, this is just a fee that basically is for the program in and of itself. So for Wisconsin residents, it's 16,800, Minnesota, 17,500, and non-residents, it's $20,300. And then we see a breakdown right under that, the differential, the CISI insurance, which you are given through the university, and so on. And then we also have an estimated additional expenses section where these are not like confirmed expenses in any way. It's just um, estimated expenses based off other students who've gone on the program. So for example, you might be able to find a flight for much cheaper than that, or it might be more expensive. You never know. But this is just kind of an average area. Um, and then the cost of attendance is in the top right corner. You can kind of see the totals there. Um, and that total is including all the estimated expenses as well. But what your tuition will be, as you can see on the left side. Okay, so a few things that you should consider and know if you're going to be studying abroad in Italy. So they have different types of wall plugins. I put the three primary ones over there. You'll primarily see, I primarily saw C and L when I was abroad. So I would just recommend getting some of those, like just simple wall plugins. For example, all Apple products are dual voltage, so all you need is something to plug it into the wall with, and you're good to go. But then something else you should know is that Italy operates with 230 volts compared to the US, which operates with 120 volts. That means if your items are not dual voltage, you'll need a power converter. So for example, if you have like a straightening iron here that only works with US voltage, you'll need a power converter to be able to use it there. Um, Power converters are fairly easy to find. You can order them on Amazon or any other places like that. Um, regarding dress is you should know that Italians tend to have a very polished look. Wearing athletic clothing for daily activities is not common. Like, I don't know if I ever wore just like leggings and a sweatshirt around the city because it's just not very common there. If you're going to be exploring like the churches and various landmarks, it is recommended that your shoulders are covered and that you have a good portion of your legs covered as well. And then I also just put a little packing list there. One of the biggest things you should know that I definitely did is overpack. You should aim for one checked suitcase and one carry-on, and then you can buy many of your toiletries there in Florence. So like I would recommend packing travel size shampoo, conditioner, body wash. And then when I get to Florence, I would go to the grocery store and go to buy those basic things that I need. They were super easy to get. And then something you should always make sure to pack is good walking shoes. You'll be walking so much. And then you should just think of like different outfits you'll wear. So you want more formal clothing as well as more like casual but nice daily clothing and so on. I kind of just put a list there you can look at really quickly before I switch the slide. Oh, and also, it's also recommended that when you go abroad, if you want the best conversion rates for currency to euros, I would recommend contacting your local bank before you leave and asking for euros. That way, you'll get the best conversion rate that way. Just a little tip of the trade. Okay, and that's the end of my section.
Awesome. So I went on the CIEE Rome Open Campus program. So I was based in Rome, Italy. I was there for all of the spring of my junior year. This program is housed in the IAP office as well. And so the program structure is a provider. So the provider is CIEE. And as you're looking through some program options, you might see CIEE in Spain or in different countries because they do have a lot of different schools throughout Europe. Which is very cool because sometimes you'll get some students that did a semester in a different CIE program and then hop into Rome. So that was a lot of fun for me. Subjects, we had a lot of subjects, so like business, communications, journalism, global health, international relations, political science, literature, sustainability, environmental sciences. You can also go fall, spring, or summer. You can also go for the whole year, depending on if you want to do that. And anyone can go freshman through senior year as well. Housing, we have three different types of housings. So either an apartment, so the apartments were a little bit bigger, more just classic traditional apartment like we have here in Madison. Residence hall, think of like the dorms, and then also homestays were an option. And then the classroom language was English unless you chose to take either the full Italian course. Also, they also have Italian survival, which is not an actual course for credit, but that was something that I did. So that would be in Italian. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So you might see some pictures of Florence in here as well. So that was really cool because CIE organized different field trips during each block, which I will go over blocks during academics. But you did one field trip with the school every block. And so one of the ones I did was going to Florence. And so I got to see the David and I got to see a lot of Florence, which was really awesome. Also, our school focused a lot about showing us different parts of Rome. Obviously, Rome is a very old city, it's very history dense. And so getting to see a lot of those things outside of the classroom was super cool for me. Um, Being in the capital, being in such a like the home of the government buildings and a lot of different things happening there at once, I did get to see a lot of different things just in general. Like imagine living in DC and being around a lot of different things happening. I lived near the Vatican, so my walk every day, I walked through the Vatican. For those of you who don't know, that's a completely different country. So I was in and out of a different country every day. So seeing that and everything like that, it's its own little city in there as well. I also studied abroad with students from all over the US. So I had a lot of UW students. I also was in class with students from Indiana, Vanderbilt, Penn State, Colorado, all over basically. And that was also very fun to see how all the other schools in the country did things as well. So we also had a lot of on-site support and organized trips and activities. Like I said, I also got to go to Pisa, see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is pretty cool. And just being in Rome, there was just a lot to do in general. I don't think I was able to do everything. I wish I did everything again, but there's a lot of museums, landmarks, restaurants. It's really endless. So academics wise, you can either enroll in 2 blocks or 3 blocks, depending on what you'd like to do. Each block is 6 weeks, and during each block, you take 2 classes. So your classes only last 6 weeks. You take your final exam, and then it's done, and then you move on to the next block. So we have 2 different school buildings as well. So there's one, and the main one is in Old Palace, and then another one is right down the street, and it's another old like royal home as well that turned into a classroom. Um, you have in-person lectures, discussions, and field trips. So, for example, one of my classes was called A Day in the Life in Ancient Rome. So I was never really in the classroom. We had once in the classroom to set up all our field trips, and then the rest of the time I was doing site visits. So I got to go in the Colosseum with my professor, and so take that tour that way. I also did the Roman baths, the aqueducts on the outside of the city, and so much more the rest of the time as well. And I also got to go through the Vatican in that class as well. So they take you on a school-led tour of the Vatican, which is huge. Um, our classes did meet 3 times a week. So because you're only taking 2 classes at once, you every day that you had school, you had each class back to back. They were about 2.5 to 3 hours, I'd say. A lot of the times you did get let out early. They do take a lot of breaks, things like that. And the school week was Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So you didn't have class Wednesday or Friday, which allowed for a lot of, if you wanted to go travel or something on the weekends, that made it very accessible as well. One thing I will say though is you can't miss a lot of class because you're taking, so make sure you're putting your academics first as well. And the professors want to also help you. They'll give you lots of recommendations where to go, what to see, different things like that. So this was my accommodation. I lived in Casa Trinoy, which is the residence hall. So basically what it was there was 3 hotel buildings basically. And one of the hotel buildings in itself, it kind of looked like a mini apartment, was all a student residence hall. So it was different students lived in there. I got lucky enough and got my own room. I don't know how that happened, to be honest, but it did. I was very, very lucky. But most of it was 2 bedrooms, then randomly somebody would get a 1 bedroom. And then for an apartments were 3 to 6 students, and then they had a couple shared bathrooms. And then homestays were 1 student per homestay as well. So that was a little bit smaller of a homestay program. All the apartments and the residence hall and the homestays, it's all over Rome. So really the walk really depended on where you lived. I had a 45-minute walk to class each day. So I did have to utilize the bus sometimes, or I'll talk about the other ways that we got to school. But one of my friends was in homestay, and her homestay was about an hour and a half from school. So it really just depends on how you want to do it, but it's all around the heart of Rome. And the apartments are also in different neighborhoods as well. So you could really end up being anywhere within the city, which is kind of cool because you can experience different things when visiting friends, things like that. Each different of the homestays, you get basic furnishing, Wi-Fi, and then even in the residence hall, we had a shared kitchen in the basement. Think about our residence halls. There's one kitchen in the basement, so same exact thing. But yeah. So a morning/afternoon in Rome. So basically what it started with is you would sit down for coffee. It's really frowned upon to take coffee to go. You can't do that. So you either sit down or you drink it at what's called a bar. So you stand at literally looks like a bar, and you drink your espresso and then you leave. So it's an event. It's not a grab and go type thing for before school. So I usually would start at a coffee shop near where I lived. And then the picture to the right is me walking through the Vatican. My walk went in and out. And then I would pop out by that bridge right there. And then I would walk all the way to school. There's my school on the right. And then you'd have school for usually you have your first class for about 3 hours, and then you have about an hour break in between. And so in that break, you can some people had a longer break. So you could either go do lunch, you could do a snack. Usually, what I did was there was a fresh fruit stand right outside school. So I would get some fruit in between classes. And then I would walk around a little bit and then go back to school. And then after school was over, it ended up being the afternoon time. And usually the city is very quiet in the afternoon. It's either time for people to nap or to relax, or then it starts to become aperitivo time. So that's like drinks and appetizers. So think just casual drinks, appetizers, things like that. So I have some pictures of that as well. And then moving into the nighttime, usually, so dinner was it was a huge thing. It's where you saw your friends. Sometimes our professors would, because our professors were Italian, they would get dinner with us, different things like that. It's a 3 hour, I would say 2 to 3 hour minimum, time for dinner because in general, life in Italy and a lot of Europe is a lot slower. So getting adjusted to that, you also don't start eating dinner until probably 8 or 9 o'clock in general. So life is a little bit slower and it's later and it's things like that. So usually after aperitivo, you would go home and relax for a little bit and then you would come back out for dinner. So these are different pastas. So you have pasta like with mushrooms, then you have classic pesto, carbonara, and then you have margarita pizza, different kinds. We had a gnocchi making class, so that one picture is of our gnocchi that we made. Also, surprisingly, I found some of the best sushi of my life in Italy, if that's something you're into. So I had to put that on there as well. And then you would walk back, then I would walk back through different piazzas because in Italy, I mean, especially in Rome, there was a lot of different piazzas where we were. And so the piazza is just an open, it's in that bottom left picture. It's just open and there's buildings around it. So a lot of the buildings around it were either restaurants or bars or shops, different things like that. So you'd go to different piazzas and hang out for a bit, get dinner in one place, move on, get gelato at a different part of it and then exit later in the night. A lot of those piazzas during the day are actually shopping, so kind of like a flea market type thing going on in the daytime, and then it breaks down and it's just open at night. And then what I would do after all of that is I'd walk back through the Vatican at night, get back to where I lived. And also a huge thing as well was, you would get desserts. So this is the bottom right is a tiramisu that we had gotten. There was a place that had 100 different flavors of tiramisu that we went to quite frequently. Also gelato, different things like that, all delicious. So transportation wise, Rome is very old. So there was two metro lines. There's the A line and the B line. But if you think about it, when you start to dig down to start creating a new metro line underground, you're in Rome. So you're gonna find ancient ruins that you cannot just dig up and move around. So building a new train line takes about 20 years. They broke ground the year before I went. So while I was there, they started to say they're estimating another 25 years before the C line starts. So the metro is not the best option. It's helpful to get you to the airport for sure. But around, like, think New York or Chicago with the L or the subway, it's not going to get you day-to-day places that you need to be. So walking is very, very huge. I think I averaged 25,000 steps a day while I was abroad, maybe more to be honest. But also something that was really helpful was the city of Rome has these bird scooters. Be smart with the scooters. Don't do it your first day. Like try and figure out the traffic and how that all works because driving is totally different than here. Just aggressiveness and speed and things like that. So I did use those quite frequently if I was running late for class or if we were going somewhere really far. Like I remember I said I had all those site visits. If I couldn't get there by metro, I would take a scooter so it wasn't an hour and a half walk. So it really just depends on what you're doing. Also, same apps to get around Italy in general for the trains. Um, you had like Italio and then some other ones. And also we had Free Now, which was another taxi app that we used a lot in Rome, to get you to the airport and things like that. But yeah, be prepared to do a lot of walking. So something to consider as well is the last couple days in Madison kind of reminded me of Rome, like super, super, super windy, but 50-ish degrees. So remember that the wind is going to make it a lot colder. And especially when I got there in January, it was very, very windy, but the lowest temperature was 50 degrees. And then it starts to get hotter around end of February, early March. But there's a lot of rain as well. So it just depends, but it gets really, really beautiful. I think it only rained with me there maybe 3 or 4 times. So it just depends. Packing, don't overpack. I took a checked suitcase and a carry-on, and I still felt like I had either bought so much or wanted to bring home so many different souvenirs. I just barely had enough room to get things back. And a lot of the times you're going to be adapting to a different style or different things that you might not have thought that you needed. So I'd say leaving room in your suitcase is really important so you can either bring those things back or be able to buy those things there. Um, other things to consider is just in general, European culture. Meals last 2 to 3 hours, like I said. Mid-afternoon, the cities are very, very quiet. And just don't be alarmed if you're like my professors came in late all the time and they ended early or they ended late. They're very loose with time. Unlike here with our classes, it hits 11:50 and we're out the door. It's just totally different, but it's something to enjoy. I think the first week I was a little shocked by how slow everything moves, but I actually ended up enjoying it a lot. But yeah, that's also something to consider. So program costs. So for 18 credits, these are some of the numbers. So Wisconsin, if you do 3 block programs, so that's 6 classes, so 18 credits. You'll get Wisconsin residents, it's $22,000 about, and then Minnesota is 22,750, non-residents 25,550, and then estimated expenses being around 4,400. This is I just put in the program fees, the differences, and then for 2 blocks, you can see it's a little bit different. So Wisconsin residents, 15,200, Minnesota residents, 15,900, and then non-residents, 18,700, and then estimated expenses, 4,200. I would say bring it really just depends on where you live as well. So, given that I was in a residence hall, I did notice I spent more money on eating out than some friends of mine that were either in a homestay or an apartment because the kitchen, you're sharing it with a whole entire building. So it's harder to get access to a lot of the times. So also just be flexible and then try it's hard to avoid the first week to avoid like the scam restaurants that charge a lot, like the tourist restaurants, but you'll figure it out and also ask your professors because that also helps a lot with saving money to go to the in in town places.
Okay, so now we're going to move into some general information about programs in Italy. We're just going to kind of just alternate through the slides. So here we have, there's several internship programs in Italy. There is the Fincantieri Engineering Design Intern Program, as well as the Management Intern in Trieste, Italy. This is a UW signature program that takes place in Trieste, Italy during the summer. As a design intern at Fincantieri, you will get hands-on experience with the shipbuilding design process while learning about naval engineering in the beautiful Italian port city of Trieste. UW signature internships are professional experiences across many fields developed exclusively for UW-Madison students. Then there's also the Centre Preparata International School of Art in Florence, Italy. So this program is actually a study abroad program, but through the study abroad program, you have the option to also embark on an internship. So you might take 1 or 2 classes, and then you'll also be in an internship as well. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds, if that's what you're looking for. And then this one takes place during the fall, summer, spring, and year terms.
So other programs in Italy, we also have IES Milan, which is spring, fall, and for the whole year. You also have Bologna Conservatorial Studies. So also spring, fall, year. You also have UW Real Estate in Rome, which I saw a lot of those students as well, which was cool to see other students in a different program in the same city as me. And then UW Classics in Italy, which is a summer program. and Umbra Institute Italian Language and Culture, which is a summer program. I also wanted to mention my program also has an opportunity to do internships for 1 year blocks. I forgot to put that on there as well. So you could do 2 blocks of classes and 1 block of an internship as well.
Okay, so program structure. So we have three primary different program structures. And these are signature, provider, and exchange programs. The general slide is a general illusion of the differences in program experiences based on our program structures. For example, on our exchange programs, you could be the only UW or US student in a classroom at a local university with students from your host country, being taught by the professor from that institution. So in Italy, it would be an Italian professor. In contrast, a UW signature program, you are typically studying abroad with like a cohort of other UW-Madison students as well as with a UW-Madison professor. These are created specifically for UW students and offer a high level of on-site support and maybe prioritize for UW scholarships as well. And then in some cases, we also partner with third-party programs. So like CET as well as CIEE, and then we have a ton of other ones. And these are, you typically take classes with other students from US universities, and often the learning mixes experts from the host country as well as American universities. And there's also a high level of on-site support. There's also a great deal of organized excursions and opportunities to engage in research, fieldwork, as well as internship opportunities. Um, so when you're on the program page, if you choose a program, you can filter by structure. So my program was a UW signature, but it was in conjunction with a provider. So I took one UW class with a professor as well as the rest of my classes through the provider. Then yeah, you can kind of just see the difference of support, the learning environment, who your classmates will be on here.
So I know a lot of the times people say study abroad is super expensive, or how much does it cost to study abroad, or I can't afford to do that. But we have a lot of tools that you guys can use as well. So our programs vary in cost depending on a number of factors, including duration, location, organized excursions, whether housing or group meals are provided, and even your residency status. So like Sydney and I showed the difference between Wisconsin residents, reciprocity, and non-residents. And there's also some programs where if you're a non-resident, you can also get it cheaper than, let's say, you would pay here on campus. And then also vice versa. It really just depends on the program. So that's something to keep in mind. While some programs do cost more than studying on campus, many programs cost the same or even less. You'll want to visit the individual program pages to determine the cost. So on each page, you're going to see a cost and funding link on the program site. And so I'd really dive into that and check that out as well. For an example, the UW in London program, the updated cost sheet lists 22,550 as the expected cost for Wisconsin residents. In comparison, Westminster lists 24,850. So it really just depends by accommodation, flight prices, additional travel, groceries, and shopping. And that's also taken into account with the city you're going to be in. Some cities are more expensive in general than others. Financial aid can often be used to pay the program fee in the same way that it can be used for tuition. Your scholarships will also most likely transfer over as well. Um, in addition to financial aid, there's a wide range of merit and need-based scholarships available to students studying abroad, which are listed within the Campus Scholarship Hub Wish, if you guys have used Wish before. I'd also recommend going on Wish and looking at as many that apply to you and apply, because a lot of times the applications are very similar and it doesn't hurt to apply to as many as you can. So we also have a number of resources available to help you. So first, we have a budget worksheet that you guys can work through to help you identify anticipated expenses so you can start getting a better picture. We also offer free passport photos for all UW-Madison students, faculty, and staff. I'd get ahead of that because in recent years, even during when I was preparing for my program, they were telling us that everything was taking a lot longer. So I'd start that as soon as possible if you know your passport is going to expire or that you need to get a visa. Start preparing what you know that you're going to need for that. And then in addition, we also have a pre-departure loan, which helps students pay for their program acceptance deposit and flight booking costs if you do not already have access to the funds. Last, we offer financial aid drop-in advising and funding info sessions to answer specific questions that pertain to your program.
Okay, so here we have listed some of our merit and need-based scholarships. So the first one on our page is the Study Abroad Scholars, which offers starting at $1,500 for winter programs all the way to $8,000 for year-long programs. So it's a very big amount. Summer programs are usually approximately $2,500 and semester about $5,000, but of course it differs. Um, I would highly recommend applying for this program if you are going abroad. Very highly recommend applying. Another scholarship that we offer is the Badgers Go Green Scholarship, which offers between $5,000 for the semester and $8,000 for the year for students who have demonstrated a really strong commitment and meaningful engagement with sustainability. Then we also have our Early Bird Scholarship as well, which offers $2,000 to students with a student aid index of $8,000 or less. This scholarship is very unique in that the applications are far earlier than our traditional scholarships. So this is you can apply for this whether or not you know whether you what program you're studying abroad on, whether you've like confirmed a program, just like when you're kind of thinking about it, have an idea of where you want to go. I would highly recommend applying. And then finally, we also have our Study Abroad Promise Scholarship, which offers up to $6,000 to students who are part of the UW-Madison Promise program and plan to participate on a summer or winter intersession faculty-led program. A list of eligible programs can be found on our website. Like the Early Bird Scholarship, the Study Abroad Promise Scholarship opens far earlier than our other scholarships. So you will know whether you have the funding before you apply and or accepting or before you accept your program. And it's important to note that only students who have previously participated in a UW-Madison study abroad program or international internship are eligible to apply for this specific scholarship. And then, of course, we also have financial aid, so you can apply your financial aid to the summer programs. You'll get offered a financial aid package via the financial aid office, and you can apply your financial aid towards the summer program if you're going in the summer, or if it's for the semester, you can, of course, also apply your financial aid. And then up here, I kind of just have some of the timelines to apply. You can take a quick little peek at that. Okay.
And then just some next steps for you guys to keep in mind. Think about your academic, professional, and personal goals, as these will help you focus your program search and prioritize the aspects that are most important to you. I know a lot of students are either want to go abroad and really want to focus on their major, or maybe some students go abroad and focus on their gen ed requirements, or some students go abroad and really want to focus on their certificates. So it's important to decide what you want to focus on while you're abroad so you can find a program that works best for you. Chat with a study abroad advisor to help you determine which programs may be best to meet your goals. All students can meet with a study abroad advisor virtually, although anyone can meet with an advisor from IAP, we recommend that students within business, engineering, and CALS start their study abroad planning process at those advising programs. So if any of you guys are CALS students, that would be coming over to our office in CALS, and all of that is divided up by your major. So I would recommend starting with the CALS if you're a CALS student, business is a business student, engineering is an engineering student. Remember also to talk with your academic advisor to discuss how study abroad will fit within your overall academic plan to make sure that it won't affect graduation or won't affect anything like that, since this is very unique for every major and every student, especially when combining different things at once. Also, build your budget and explore our funding and scholarship resources. Remember to attend one of our funding study abroad sessions or financial aid drop-in advising. Reach out to past study abroad students using our Return Student Network, which is found in the Student Voices section in our homepage. Return students can provide excellent information about the specific program you're considering. Like Sydney and I would love to probably talk about our programs for hours on end, and I know a lot of study abroad returnees feel the exact same way. Also remember to apply or update your passport. Like I said on the last time I spoke, it is so important that you start that sooner rather than later. The last thing you need is not being able to go on a program because your passport is not up to date. And then once you've decided on a program, start applying. Most students are surprised by how early our application deadlines are. They're usually about 4 to 6 months, sometimes even earlier before they start. I know CALS programs are definitely within the 4 to 6 month mark. But my IAP, I had to apply September 3rd, and then I went abroad starting that January. So think about making sure you're writing those applications ahead of time.
Thank you guys for coming to our info session. So we do have a few questions in the chat, and if you come up with any more in the meantime, just throw them in there. So the first one is about Florence, so I can answer that one. It asks, are the applications rolling for UW and Florence, or does it not matter when you apply? So for UW and Florence, the applications are not rolling, so you will be equally considered with everyone else as long as you apply by the program deadline. It will open on May 1st and then close sometime in August. I believe it is in the beginning half of August. So it's not rolling, but you will find out approximately 2 to 4 weeks after you apply. And then, are we allowed to pick our roommates for either apartments or homestay? So this will differ slightly via program, but usually you don't get to explicitly pick, but you can write down someone's name. At least I was able to through CET and say, I have this preference of a roommate. Like I could put someone's name if I knew someone I was going abroad with. I did not, so I did not do that. But then you do oftentimes, kind of you guys remember like freshman year applying for the dorms, like you fill out like a little form saying like what time you go to sleep and just like answering basic questions like that, and then you get paired with people.
Yeah, so I see the question about being interested in CIE Rome for 2026 and just regarding the visas. So I would say try and look into that now. And especially over this summer if you want to go spring of 2026. I know the Italian consulate is very nice. I didn't do that. I have dual citizenship, so I did not have to go through the visa process. But I know a lot of my friends did, and they were super responsive and super nice to deal with. And so I know a lot of my friends had a really good experience with that, but they did start very early. So this summer, I would say get on that this summer. Um, but yeah, just try and make an appointment as early as possible. And yes, they did change their visa requirements, so you do have to go do that as well. For the Rome program, are you randomly assigned roommates in the residence halls? In the residence halls, it depends. If you usually because we have residence halls, apartments, or homestay, you rank which one you want. You will probably get which type you want unless something crazy is going on. But within that, you can also, like Sydney said, write down a name of somebody that you want to live with, and that same thing like freshman year they'll pair you if that makes sense. Pricing between apartments and residence halls, they're about the same, I believe. If you specifically request, if you like know you want your own room and you don't want to leave it up to chance, you can pay, I believe, a couple more $100 to get like make sure that no matter if you're in an apartment or you're in a residence hall, you get your own room. Other than that, though, it's totally up to chance if you get your own room where you're sharing. But yeah. I also see the question, we find out 2 weeks after we apply if we get in, or 2 weeks after apps close in August. I think some programs are rolling admission and some programs are not. If it's rolling admission, I found out like 2 to 3 weeks after, if I remember correctly. But yeah.
So for Florence, like I mentioned earlier, it's not rolling, so you'll find out 2 to 4 weeks after. Different programs are rolling, but Florence is not. So you'll find out 2 to 4 weeks after applications close. Rolling will be approximately 2 to 3 weeks after. 2 to 4 weeks after you submit your application. And then I kind of just want to go back to the visa question. So I did apply, I did have to get an Italian visa. I did not have to do the fingerprint because last year they did not have that requirement. Um, but I will say I am studying abroad again this summer in London, where I did have to go get my biometrics done. And making an appointment wasn't extremely difficult. And any questions I had, the consulates are super helpful. And I know it'll be very similar for Italy, as long as you like plan ahead of time. And we have a lot of support both in our study abroad office for your help getting your visa, as well as the consulates will of course be helpful as well. Um, but yeah, do we have any more questions we can answer about Italy specific programs or study abroad as a whole? We can try and answer any questions you all have.
I'm a kinesiology major considering going to Rome, but worried about meeting requirements for my degree. It is common. I'm a genetics major. I went abroad. I did get some general requirements for my genetics major taken care of. My CIE Rome is, you do have a lot of science option classes, not necessarily like a hard science like chem or biology, but I did take a nutrition class. So I did apply that to a gen ed for my degree. I also took a health and wellness and psychology class as well. So that also applied for a general requirement for my degree. I had a lot of global health. One of my friends is a kinesiology major and also went to Rome, and she got some good gen eds as well. So you might not get necessarily your like kinesiology like 10 whatever like number, but you could get stuff that still does apply.
Yeah, a lot of the classes you have options for how they transfer back. So I know like all the classes I took transferred back to some type of gen ed requirement that I needed, whether it was for directly for my major for history, or I got a natural science credit, I got a language credit. So there's like a bunch of different credits you can apply. And then most classes have different ways it can transfer back. So you can select how it transfers back to campus to be reflected on your transcript.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about experience traveling on the weekends? Yeah, so I did travel pretty much every weekend. I think I stayed in Rome for about 3 weekends, and the rest I was traveling. Because I didn't have class on Fridays, we would usually schedule a train or a plane out on Friday morning or Thursday night. And then we would come back Sunday night. Usually it does get exhausting after a while. But it's worth it. You're seeing so many different countries back to back. I would say the biggest thing to make sure that you can do all that is plan ahead of time, know who you're going with, and make some plans. Also keep in mind just general like world things going on. Like if you don't want to be in Dublin for St. Patrick's Day, like make sure, you don't go over St. Patrick's Day weekend. Or if there's like a big holiday happening somewhere and you don't want to get caught up in it. Like I know Spain had like Festival or something like that when I went. It was huge. It was so cool. But I know some of my friends didn't necessarily want to be there for that. So just maybe research a little bit, get some plans ahead of time, know what cities you want to go to, and start looking into that very early, because once you get there, like you hit the ground running and everything is go, 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 go. So it's hard to like plan those trips like on the fly, in my opinion. But yeah, it's
Um,
definitely.
you finish, sorry.
Oh, I'm good. You got it.
Okay, I was just gonna throw in there, something I would recommend is maybe do research if you are planning to travel on the weekends, do research ahead of time, but I would not book your tickets into and any flights until you're there, simply because you don't know what your schedule is going to be. Your school might have like a random event on a Friday that you have to attend, or you might have like an exam early on Monday. So I would recommend waiting personally until you're there to plan those trips. And also, I'm not sure how it is on the Rome program. But I know in Florence, we weren't allowed to miss classes. There was no way to make up the credit. You simply lost points for it. So, and like, even like if you were sick, you would like still like attendance was mandatory in all classes. So I would just really recommend if you are planning to travel, which is totally a lot of kids do it. Not everyone does. You don't have to, but if you are hoping to, I would recommend waiting until you are there. And then likewise, I would also say something that a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people forget while studying abroad is to explore the city that you are in. Sometimes at the end of the program, I know some of my friends in my program, they wish they would have stayed in Florence more simply because they felt like they didn't experience all of it because they were so busy traveling. So I'd also consider that as well, like balancing if you want to travel that and staying in your host city. But yeah, you're definitely welcome to do that. But yeah, it's super easy to travel around Italy via train.
Yeah, and just in general, Europe is so close together. So getting from place to place, the flights are no more than 2 hours. So it's not a huge thing to figure out quickly. I think I went in with a just general plan, and then once I got there, then we just kind of just hit the ground running once you get there. So just keep in mind where you might want to go. But like Sydney said, don't book anything until you get there. I had friends that booked stuff and had to cancel. So be careful with that. With the Rome program, not having class on Wednesdays was a lot of like day trips or a different city. Like we went to different residential cities in Italy a ton as well. So think about that as well. That's also nice to have. And then I see, do the programs get sold out quickly? I wouldn't say they get sold out quickly, but I'd say there are limits to how many students they can take. And if it is a rolling admission program, I wouldn't apply the day before. I don't know what your opinion is on that, Sydney.
Yeah, if it is a rolling admission program, I would say apply earlier rather than later. This isn't an Italy program, but I just know like the DIS Stockholm program, for example. That's just one that comes to my mind. That's a rolling admission. And for that one, you enroll in classes on a rolling admission as well. So that for that kind of program, you're going to want to apply sooner so then you could get into your classes sooner. And I'm pretty sure it is similar for other rolling programs, not sure on the class specifics, but I will say the earlier you apply to a rolling program, the higher the likelihood. But of course, you can apply before the deadline and still have a chance of getting in. But I would also say the earlier the better. And then one thing I forgot to mention earlier, as in Rome, they did field trips in the Rome program. Florence also did field trips. So we went to Lucca, Bologna, like through CET, where we took like a pasta making class. We went on tours. We went to different locations. But yeah, so provider programs, I will say, will offer more excursions and group activities than, say, a direct enrollment would.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention before, I don't think either of us mentioned this, you can really, I don't know if this is common knowledge or not, but it wasn't for me when I started thinking about study abroad. You can only apply to one program at a time within UW. So you do have to pick a program that you really want to go on. And if you don't get in, then you reassess and you can apply for another one. But you have to keep in mind you are applying to one program at a time.
Yes, so if you're deciding between two programs and if one has a note that is competitive, that deadline will usually be earlier. So I would personally recommend applying to the competitive one first, seeing your results, and you can always turn down acceptance and then apply to the other one if you change your mind as well. But yes, it's only one application at a time. That's something I also did not know when I began my application process as well. One thing that also something like I feel like might be common knowledge, but something I personally wasn't super aware of originally. So when you book your flight to go abroad, that is like an independent process unless you choose to do it with other people. And we do have some programs specifically like faculty-led programs where you will fly with a faculty, but for most of our study abroad programs, you'll be booking a flight independently and then using that to get your visa and all the other steps. It's more independent, but our office does support all those steps. So if you have any questions, you can always email us or talk to your study abroad advisor or enrollment advisor and so on.
Yeah. I went by myself. I ran into people in my program on a
Mhm.
layover in my flight. So that's also something that could happen, but you might not be traveling with people, you know. So that's something to be prepared for. I see. Would you say the Rome program is competitive? Um, I'd say it's popular. I don't know about necessarily like extremely competitive, but it is popular, and I think that does create some competition. So I would say definitely apply early. Make sure you can get your spot because it is rolling.
And it looks like we just got another question. It asks if Florence program is not rolling and you don't find out until you get until late August, how do you apply to your backup program if applications are closed by then? Most of our applications close in September throughout the month of September and into early October. But most of them are due in September, so usually you do have time to apply to other programs. We have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of our um, spring applications do close in September. Just more the more competitive ones, and then just a few random ones as well close in August.
I'd also like to point out if you guys are business or engineering or CALS, sometimes you might have a different deadline than in the IAP office. So keep that in mind. So if one program you're applying to that you're interested in and your main program is IAP, but then your backup program is business or CALS or something, you might have different deadlines. I know the business school, their deadlines are so far in advance, like they're in March. So that's also something to keep in mind that if you're applying to programs within different colleges, to go to different ones, like make sure you have a nice note, make sure you know when those deadlines are because they could sneak up on you. It's not universal throughout the whole campus.
Yeah, and do we have any other questions? Feel free to ask anything you have. Well, if we don't have anything else, I just kind of want to conclude by saying take some time, look through our program website. We have so much information about all of our programs on there. And then if you're considering a program, I'd recommend making an appointment with either an exploration advisor for more general advising about different areas, or you can also make an appointment with advisors specifically for Italy and talk more about Italian programs or specific programs as well. Um, but yeah, I'd really recommend just talking through some advisors before going through the application process. It might make it just a bit easier.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all.